Welcome to The Explainer. This is where we take really complex topics and, well, we break them down into presentations that actually make sense.
Have you ever really stopped to wonder what's going on up there? And maybe more importantly, how all that internal wiring connects you to everyone else? Okay, let's dive right into that journey, from the inner world of the mind to those invisible threads that link us all together.
So first things first, we have to start with the foundation, right? We're talking about the actual blueprint of our minds, the structure of our brains, and what it even means to be intelligent.
Okay, so when we talk about male versus female brains, it's really important to remember that every single brain is unique, but one source points out some pretty fascinating general patterns. For example, on average, the male brain tends to have a lot more gray matter. You can think of that as being great for really deep, single-task focus. Now, on the flip side, the female brain tends to be richer in white matter. That's kind of like the superhighway connecting different parts of the brain, which might just explain a knack for multitasking.
But, and this is a huge but, a bigger brain doesn't affect IQ, and different definitely doesn't mean better or worse. The really crucial point here is that these are just broad stroke patterns, okay? Not hard and fast rules for any one person. In fact, you literally can't tell someone's gender just by looking at their brain scan. It's just not that simple.
We often think being super intelligent is a superpower, but what's really interesting is that it's not always a walk in the park. It can come with some pretty unique struggles, like getting totally stuck in analysis paralysis because you're just overthinking everything, or that feeling of being isolated because you just can't find anyone on your wavelength. And then there's this one, absorbing the emotional weight of the entire world, all because of super high empathy. It could be a heavy load.
Okay, so we have this incredibly complex mind, but how does it even begin to connect with another one? What is that initial spark all about? Let's explore that.
All right, let's talk about the spark of attraction. We're going to explore the chemistry and psychology behind why we fall for someone. And spoiler alert, it's a little less magic and a whole lot more biology.
So one psychological model actually breaks this whole falling for someone thing down into 3 stages. And yep, they're all driven by hormones. First up, you've got lust. That's fueled by hormones like estrogen. Then it moves into attraction. This is where dopamine and norepinephrine kick in, creating that giddy, can't think about anything else feeling. And finally, you get to attachment, which is powered by oxytocin, the Tuttle or bonding hormone.
And check this out. This chart really shows the chemical storm that's happening inside you. It's like a cocktail that creates that total roller coaster of feelings when you have a crush. You get this huge hit of dopamine, which feels amazing, like a reward. Then there's norepinephrine, which puts your whole body on high alert. That's literally where the butterflies in your stomach come from. And here's the wild part. Your serotonin levels actually drop, which is a big reason why you just can't stop thinking about them.
But okay, sometimes a connection feels like it's deeper than just chemistry, right? It feels unseen, almost like there's this silent conversation happening between two minds.
One source actually describes this as a kind of deep mental synchronization. And I love how this quote puts it. Even distance feels like a whisper of closeness. It's this really powerful feeling that can show up in some super subtle ways, making you feel linked no matter how far apart you are.
So the first sign, that moment when they just pop into your head? It's so vivid, totally out of the blue. Some in psychology might call this emotional resonance. It could be a little sign that your minds are subtly in sync, even when you're miles apart.
Then there's this, an unseen pull toward them. And we're not talking about some desperate feeling here. It's more like a gentle, magnetic tug. It's this quiet instinct where your attention just seems to be drawn, almost subconsciously, to things that make you think of them.
Okay, sign number 3. You start noticing these tiny but meaningful coincidences. It happens because your subconscious is just so tuned into them. You're thinking about them and then, boom, that one song that reminds you of them starts playing on the radio. It's really just your brain picking up on patterns, but boy, does it feel almost magical.
And then there's this one. Your heart just senses their presence, even from far away. Some people call it subconscious attunement. It's that uncanny feeling, right? You get this sudden thought, I bet they're thinking of me, and literally moments later, your phone buzzes with their name. It feels way too perfect to be just a coincidence, doesn't it?
And finally, when you put all these subtle cues together, you get to the deepest level. It's like you're both in this silent dance. You can just sense each other's emotions, their joy, their sadness, from a distance, long before a single word is ever spoken.
Okay, so once that connection is made, how do we navigate it? How do we protect it and maybe more importantly, protect ourselves?
Let's switch gears and talk about guarding that connection by looking at the signs of a relationship in trouble.
So, one perspective points out that red flags can look different depending on where you are in the relationship. When you're just dating, for example, a red flag might be someone who seems to keep you isolated from their friends. But later on, say in a marriage, those flags can get a lot more serious. We're talking about a partner who constantly disrespects your family or even uses threats.
But here's the thing. Advice about relationships and red flags, it's not always so cut and dried. In fact, it can get incredibly polarizing, especially when you bring up controversial online figures like Andrew Tate, for example.
Yeah, when you look at analyses of his message, you see this massive divide. On one side, you have supporters who feel he's empowering men, telling them to focus on themselves and prioritize their own growth. But on the other side, you have critics who argue that his rhetoric is derogatory, that it objectifies women, and creates a really unhealthy us versus them dynamic between the sexes.
So let's move beyond just the initial attraction and the warning signs. What does a truly wise, a truly mature approach to connection, what does that actually look like in practice?
Well, one source suggests that real wisdom isn't about being the loudest person in the room. It's actually about cultivating certain private habits. Things like knowing when to just walk away from a pointless argument, really protecting your private life, and crucially, maintaining your own emotional and financial independence.
In this quote, I think just perfectly sums up that balanced, wise approach. She forgives, but she doesn't forget. Think about it. Forgiveness, that's for your own peace of mind, right? It's about letting go of anger. But the not forgetting part, that's about learning from what happened so you can protect yourself in the future. It's not about holding a grudge. It's about having healthy boundaries. So, wow, what a journey. We've gone from the very blueprint of the brain, all the way through that chemical storm of a new crush, and landed on the wisdom of a protected bond. It really leaves us with this one big question, doesn't it? Is true wisdom less about what you know and more about how you connect? Maybe. Just maybe, the greatest intelligence we have is the ability to truly understand ourselves and, in turn, each other.